So we reread verses 15 through 17 because 15, well, we stopped off after 14 last time, but basically I
In
was saying,
Zechariah. I just want to say that.
yeah, Zechariah. So basically I was saying how I used to read this foolish shepherds, meaning leaders of the flock, whether it be ministers, whether it be religious leaders, whether it be Levites, whatever. But now when I read this, all my mind goes to are the 70 shepherds that Enoch references in Enoch 89 and 90, which point back to the 70 angels that were appointed to be over the 70 nations. Yahusha was appointed to be Elohim of Israel, but the Gentile nations, the 70 nations, were Yah appointed 70 angels to be over them. That's documented in Deuteronomy 32:8 in the Septuagint. That's documented in, I can't remember where it is, but it's in Jubilees. And it's also in Psalm 82, the congregation of the gods, right? So now when I read this, and I think when we finish up, it is pointing to the angels that are not righteously leading the 70 nations, right?
Well,
And that's what, go ahead.
I was just going to say it also smacks of the Black Eyed Club too.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. Now, they always cover their right eye. They're always flashing these symbols, basically saying, hey, we're part of the hierarchy of those 70 shepherds or the
Hmm.
shepherds, angels over the nations. It's wild. It's all coming together in my head now. Um, and he says, take for yourself the implements of a foolish shepherd, right? They have been foolish. And in Psalm 82, he keeps warning them, you keep doing this, and you are going to die like men. Because they're not men, but he promises you will die like men. Um, for indeed, I will raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who are cut off, nor seek the young, nor hear. So, because of the rebellion of mankind, and then what did he do to Israel when they rebelled, right? He cut them off from their land and scattered them to the nations. So now those nations, the angels who are now fallen over those nations, are now ruling over his people Israel. And they're not doing what Yah says. They're not seeking the lost. They're not healing those that are broken. They're not feeding those appropriately, but he will eat the flesh of the fat and tear the hooves in pieces. He, meaning these foolish or wicked shepherds. And what are they doing? They're literally consuming humans, drinking blood, stealing children. I mean, I know this is sick, but this is exactly what it's talking about. Um,
Mitzi, uh,
yes,
what
sir.
what was people from Hollywood and a lot of celebrities and stuff doing here? I don't know, a few years ago. They were doing something with their eye, and I can't remember what that was now. What was it?
Well, aren't they also accepting something called the worm or a
Yep.
vril?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
black eye.
Hmm.
And isn't it
And
always the right eye
yeah, and then
normally?
they always like do symbols where they pose for pictures where they're covering. Is it their left eye?
Either or. They've been known to do both.
But mostly I think it's the right.
It's the right, and they
And
leave
we're
the
gonna
left.
see why. Yeah, is it the right eye? And we're gonna see why, as
It
we keep
is.
reading here. Yeah. Um, woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock, a sword shall be against his arm, meaning his arm is not going to be in strength when Yahusha returns and he sets up his bride as their replacement rulers of the nations, right? And against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye shall be totally blinded. And that's what you're talking about, Ray. They'll play. Is it the right eye?
Yeah,
What is it
it's
though?
right.
Yeah. So Archie's got
Well, some of them's a left.
a few of them are the left, but if there's a picture showing all these celebrities covering, and it's what 90% their right eye.
Yeah. It depends on if they're left or right-handed.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. Well, I don't want to spend the time to bring that up. But anyway, that's what they're flashing, and then it hit me, a lot of them I do think are fallen angels or of the hierarchy that are over the nations right now. And that's what they're doing. They're flashing that they're foolish shepherds. They
So
always
I
have to
was,
tell us the truth, but most people have no idea what they're showing. Sorry,
I
Kimberly.
looked up what the significance of the right eye was in scripture, and it said that it often symbolizes spiritual insight, moral focus, and the need for purity of heart. As seen as Jewish teaching that if the right eye causes sin, it should be removed to avoid spiritual darkness. It also appears in context of divine judgment and covenant loyalty, such as the curse on the worthless shepherd whose right eye is blinded.
Oh, well.
Yeah, and then Rachel said, was it Jeroboam's right arm that was withered?
Guys, wait, hold on.
Adam?
I gotta share this with you too. I was just reading, like, there's a bunch of different things. Here, one mention says the Antichrist. In Islam culture, there is an end of times figure who is said to be the Antichrist. He is believed to be blind in his right eye, and he would attempt to take out the world as the true Messiah. I never heard that before.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, so basically they're acknowledging that they are blind to Yah's, will or truth. And those fallen angels, again, they cannot repent. So it's not like they can turn it around. Yeah, and there was a king whose arm was withered because he disobeyed Yah. I was gonna, I don't think it was Jeroboam though, was it? Yeah. It's in 1 Kings 13. And behold, a man of Elohim went from Judah to Bethel by the word of Yah. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense, and he cried out against the altar. Behold, a child Josiah by name shall be born to the house of David. Let me see. Wait a
It's in
minute.
verse 4.
Verse 4, yeah. So it came to pass when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of Elohim who cried out against the altar in Bethel, he stretched out his hand from the altar, saying, arrest him. Then his hand, which he stretched out toward him, withered. I was thinking about the king whose arm turned leprous when he went to give incense. That's another example of, and probably, their right arm, or, Jesse's probably right. It's probably, if they're left-handed, they would stretch out their left hand. But y'all speaking of their arm of strength, right?
That makes me think of Miriam also, whose hand would or oh no, her whole body became leprous. It was
Right.
Moshe whose hand, but I think Yah was just showing him at the burning bush because his right hand became leprous, and then Yahuah told him to put it back and then take it back out, and his arm became normal again. So there's a connection there, but I'm not sure what that is, because Moshe was most certainly not evil in any way.
King Uzziah developed leprosy on his forehead for entering the temple. That's not what I'm talking about, though. Anyway, there was another one. There was a king that tried to get what is it? The altar of incense, put fire on it, and his arm became leprous. That was another one. Anyway, there's examples all over the folks that disobey Yah.
So real quick, oh, maybe I'm just here in the wrong place. Jeroboam, the one who's what happened with him? He turned, oh, his hand withered, right?
Yes.
And then he's the one who tries to move to the 8th month, right?
Yeah, he moved tabernacles to 8:15.
Yep.
In 1232 of First Kings. It's just kind of tying, we were talking about something separate this morning, but it is interesting that our witnesses were found in First Kings both times, and that's just interesting. We're also talking about this 8th month tabernacles. Anyway.
Yeah, that's neat. So anyway, that's why, when I read it again after we'd been studying Enoch, when I heard foolish shepherd, my mind went to those fallen angels over the nations. And then it's almost like verse 17 confirmed that with all the right eye shenanigans and all that. And then, hey, I've got Jeremiah 23, 1 through 4 in my notes as well. I don't remember what it is right now, but we'll see. It says, okay, here we go. Jeremiah 23, woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, says Yah. And we know in Enoch, they are destroying way more than Yah instructed them to. Therefore, thus says Yahuah of Israel, against the shepherds who feed my people, you have scattered my flock, driven them away, and not attended to them. Behold, I will attend to you for the evil of your doings. But I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all countries where I have driven them, and bring them back to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. This is verse 4. This is neat. I will set up shepherds over them, over the nations and Israel. I'm just adding my what I'm trying to say there. I will set up shepherds over them who will feed them, and they shall fear no more be dismayed, nor shall they be lacking, says Yah. So there it is. He's driven onto the nations under the jurisdiction of these shepherds, but he will gather them, the second Exodus, right? And then verse 4, he will set up shepherds over them who will feed them and direct them correctly, meaning his bride is going to replace those shepherds over Israel, because he says clearly he will set up King David over them, and Yahusha will be there in their midst. And then over the nations, right, the innumerable multitude of the Gentiles coming with Israel, he will set up his bride, and they will be kings and priests during the millennium. And of course, these angels will be bound in the pit and dealt with in the last great day, or the great white throne judgment. Sorry. So anyway, to me, Jeremiah 23, 1 through 4 goes along with what Zechariah is talking about here in 15 through 17. Does that make sense?
Can I try to tie two together? The parable in Luke, I think it's 19,
Oh, being over the cities.
Sorry.
Yeah, the minus starting in verse 24.
Where are you?
Oh,
Yeah, where are you? That's where I want to be, I think.
oh, Luke 19. Yeah, Luke 19, start in verse 12. And yeah, it talks about them having authority over 10 cities or ever how they were faithful. Do you want me to start reading it?
Yeah, please.
Um, Luke 19, starting in 12, it says, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. So this is, of course, he's talking about Yahusha himself. So he called 10 of his servants. Interesting, that matches the 10 virgins, the parable of the 10 virgins, delivered to them 10 minas or amount of money and said to them, do business till I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. Sounds like the Yahudim, right? Israel, they rejected him. And so it was when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading, grow in the grace and knowledge, right? Then they came first, saying, Master, your mina has earned 10 minas. And he said to them, well done, good servant, because you were faithful in very little, have authority over 10 cities. And the second came, saying, Master, your mina has earned 5 minas. Likewise, he said to him, you also be over 5 cities. Then another came, saying, Master, here is your mina, which I have kept put away in a handkerchief, for I feared you because you are an austere man. You collect what you do not deposit, and reap where you did not sow. And he said to him, out of your mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew that I was an austere man, collecting what I did not deposit and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank, that at my coming I might have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him and give it to them who has 10 minas. But they said, Master, he has 10 minas. For I say to you that to everyone who has will be given, and from him who does not have, even what he has shall be taken away from him.
For some reason, that reminds me of Second Baruch when the angels came before him with their baskets full. Some came with their partial baskets full, and then there were some that came and were complaining because the people whom they were over were not repenting. They were not repenting, and they were complaining because all this work that they were doing, it was not yielding them anything. And uh, it it's in I think it's in Second Baruch.
Wait, Christina, just before we go there, can I just
Yeah.
in verse 26 of Luke of what Mitzi just read, for I say unto you that unto everyone which hath that has shall be given, and from him, this is where we're going to start. From him that has not, even that he hath shall be taken away from him. But those mine enemies which would not that I should reign over them, bring hither and say, slay them before me. I guess in verse 26, from him that has not, from him shall be taken away. That's basically idle servants. And that is, I'm connecting that to verse 17 in Zechariah 11:17. Woe unto the idle shepherd. That was where I was connecting that. So sorry, but you can keep going, Christina.
No, I'm glad you did. Um,
Yeah, and then the emphasis on 27, he's saying those who refuse to have him rule over them, slay them. So at his return, they will be slaughtered.
Yeah, they're his enemies that he's going to destroy for their idolatry, basically, of lifting
Right,
themselves up to be really the ones worshipped, right?
right, right. So sorry, Christina. I know what you're talking about in Baruch, though. Yep.
Yeah, but it doesn't have anything to do with it doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on in Zechariah 11, but it just Luke itself reminded me of the angels also. They have their work to do, and they would bring their baskets full of their works, um, and some half full, and then some with absolutely nothing. And I guess just the gist of it was have patience because you never know when the one you're guarding over will repent. So anyway, sorry. I took
I'm going to just make another quick note back in that Luke 19. Okay, so basically, this idle servant is basically saying, "Oh, it's because I feared you and I didn't want to I was too scared to do what you told me, basically." And then in verse 22, he says to him, "Out of thine own mouth I will judge thee, thou wicked servant." So the wicked servant is the idle servant who doesn't do what he tells him to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And is that, well, who knows? But you kind of wonder the folks that just, and I made a comment coming in, I was kind of laughing. I was like, it was easier when we just plopped our rear ends down somewhere and then some minister told us what to believe.
Yeah.
But is that not what a wicked servant does? They
Yeah.
don't do digging or working on their own to grow in Yahusha's grace and knowledge in a way, right?
Yeah.
They're not working for more minas. So, but and I wasn't trying to say verses 15 through 17 in Zechariah 11 is only fallen angels. This does fall for the human leaders as well,
Mhm.
whether in churches, whether in government, wherever, where they're leading people wrong and doing injustice, and it's going on
Right. Some of them are
everywhere.
doing it in ignorance, and some of them
Yeah,
are doing it to deceive.
yeah. Or personal gain, whichever, they're in big trouble. But yeah.
At this point, I think a lot of them is personal gain, especially when you get right down to the smaller echelons of government within the states.
Yeah.
The
Yep.
governors.
I mean, yeah, and just churches, like those who start churches, there is so much to be gained from being in a church. You don't have to pay taxes, you collect people's cash. There's just so much like craziness going on for gain
And
and
they live in
that's
$1 million houses, a lot of them. Buy my book here. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Anything else in Zechariah 11? You ready to move on to 12?
Yep.
Okay. Christina, you want to go ahead and read that one unless somebody else wants to?
I'll be happy to read.
Are you going to read it in the Septuagint?
Yep, I've got it open right here. The
Okay.
burden of the word of Yahuwah for Israel. Say, says Yahuwah, that stretches out of the sky and lays the foundation of the earth and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem as a trembling, doorpost to all nations round about, and in Judea there shall be a siege against Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will make Jerusalem a trodden stone to all the nations. Every one that tramples on it shall utterly mock at it, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. In that day, says Yahuah Elohim, I will strike every horse with amazement and his rider with madness. But I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah and I will strike all the horses of the nations with blindness. And the captains of thousands of Judah shall say in their hearts, We shall find for ourselves the inhabitants of Jerusalem in Yahuah Elohim, their El. In that day I will make the captains of thousands of Judah as a firebrand among wood, and as a torch of fire in stubble, and they shall devour on the right hand and on the left all the nations round about. And Jerusalem shall dwell again by herself, even in Jerusalem. And Yahuwah shall save the tabernacles of Judah, as at the beginning, that the boast of the house of David and the pride of the inhabitants of Jerusalem may not magnify themselves against Judah. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahuwah shall defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the weak one among them in that day shall be as David, and the house of David as the house of Yahuwah, as the angel of Yahuwah before them.
Christina, what verse are you in?
I'm sorry, I'm going into verse 9.
Okay, thank you.
And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and compassion, and they shall look upon me because they have mocked me, and they shall make lamentation for him as for a beloved friend, and they shall grieve intensely as for a firstborn son. 11. In that day the lamentation in Jerusalem shall be very great, as the mourning for the pomegranate grove cut down in the plain. And the land shall lament in separate families, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves. 13. The family of the house of Levi by itself, and their wives by themselves, and the family of Simeon by itself, and their wives by themselves. All the families that are left, each family by itself, and their wives by themselves.
Christina, can you please read verse 8 again?
Sure. It says, And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahuwah shall defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the weak one among them in that day shall be as David, and the house of David as the house of Yahuwah, as the angel of Yahuwah before them.
Okay.
And let's see, mine, in the ISR, mine reads, In that day Yahuwah shall shield the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and the house of David like Elohim, like the messenger of Elohim, which I believe is Yahusha, before them.
Yeah, so the only difference between our versions and the LXX is the word house of Elohim is not in the LXX.
Yeah. Oh, wait, and the house of David as the house of Yah?
Yeah. Ours says the house of David shall be as Elohim.
Okay, because I just read out of the LXX.
Oh, I thought you were reading out of your ISR, the second reading.
I did.
You didn't read house either in the ISR then.
No. Oh, I got here so that the comeliness. Oh, wait a minute. I'm in. No, you're right. It only says that the house of David like Elohim.
Right.
Oh, wow. And the feeble among them in that day shall be like David.
The other word that I picked up
Huh.
on was in verse 2. The word cup is missing from the LXX.
And in verse 11, it says the plain, but in my version, it says the plain of Megiddo, which is Armageddon.
Didn't you say something about pomegranates in verse 11? And is that the translation of Hadadrimon?
Yes,
In
she
that,
did.
yeah, in that day. The lamentation in Jerusalem shall be very great as the mourning for the pomegranate grove cut down in the plain.
And then my version says the plain of Megiddo.
Mine says, in that day there shall be a great mourning in Jerusalem as the mourning of Hadadrimmon in the valley of Megiddon.
That's what mine says. In that day, the mourning of Jerusalem is going to be great, like the mourning at Hadad Ramon in the valley
Yeah.
of Megiddo. Yeah.
Okay, and one other thing was in verse 10, and that's always to me pointed more to Yahusha. It says, I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication, and they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. And the
Pierced,
LXX says something different. What does it say?
mocked.
Mocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had pierced too. So to me, verse 10 is when he pours out his Holy Spirit on the Israelites that he's gathered back home, right?
Revelation 7.
Yes. And then when he gives them his spirit, then they see him for who he truly is, right?
Yep.
Spirit of grace. That is, grace is basically that ability to see clearly, in my opinion.
So what's frustrating about this chapter is people use this to say, see, the people in Jerusalem are his people. But honestly, this is at the end. This is right before, this is just before Armageddon, right? Yahusha's return. Because he's already gathered, a lot of the Israelites have already moved into the land. There's still stragglers coming along, but the true, the we'll just say the squatters have already ran off or been killed or gonna be killed. But we're gonna get into more of this later. But do you see what I mean? Why they can use, see, the people in Jerusalem are the true Israelites. And I don't, he's already brought a lot of the second Exodus folks. Because you're right before the Day of Atonement right here. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of the true Israelites have come back into the land already. And
I
he
noticed
does And he does say they are going to fight during the battle of Armageddon, the Israelites.
I noticed in verse 3 it said, shall be cut to pieces instead of mock in the LXX. It says mock.
Oh, yeah, all who should heave it away will surely be cut into pieces.
Yeah, see, mine says all lifting it are severely injured, and I'm like, uh, what's that about?
Yeah, the cutting to pieces makes better sense because that's when that sword comes after them, right?
Right. Well, they even it's like they changed the whole thing here in the ISR because it says, and in that day it shall be that I make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples, all lifting it are severely injured, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered against it. Now, how did they get heavy stone out of that?
Well, in the King James it said burdensome. So maybe that's
Yeah, trodden stone to all the nations. I will make Jerusalem a trodden stone. Everyone that tramples on it shall utterly mock it, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered together against it. And you know what? That's what we're seeing today. People are waking up to the fact that the Edomites are over there in Israel and they are hating it. They're hating on it. And I also think too that uh Well, never mind. My brain was going someplace else.
So I think what's verse 3 is talking about, all nations are of the earth are gathered against it. And I think and we know where that's going to be, in the valley of Megiddo, right? So if you go to Revelation 16, it talks about it there, verses 13 through 16. And this is how Satan pulls it off. It says, I thought I saw three unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons performing signs, and here's the key, which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of Yahushua Almighty. That's at his return. And he says, skip to verse 16, and they gathered them together to the place called in Hebrew Armageddon. And that's the same place as the Valley of Megiddo. And it's roughly 50 miles north of Jerusalem. And then that, of course, is when Yahushua returns and the great slaughter begins, the Battle of Armageddon. And I think that's what he's referencing here in this, all nations come to that battle of the great day.
Mitzi, what was that reference again?
Revelation 16, verses 13 through 16, where it tells you that the demons go out and gather the nations to that great battle at that place, Armageddon, which, if you look it up, is the Valley of Megiddo. And then verse 7, Yah will save the tents of Judah first. So he saves his people, and then he starts and commences to go around the whole earth to slaughter his enemies. And that's verse 9. It shall be in that day being Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, that his foot hits, that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And the wild thing is, it happens again after the 1,000 years are finished. It's just, Satan hates Jerusalem.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered, 12:12, and the land shall mourn. That's funny, 144,000. Every clan by itself, the clan of the house of David by itself, and their women by themselves. The clan of the house of Nathan by itself, and their women by themselves. So have they managed to determine who's who?
Evidently. But what do you think the mourning is for? For the all the time that they had forgotten him? Maybe.
I
mean,
think so.
Yeah, and then in Ezekiel, when it talks about when he brings them back and they realize, it says they will hate themselves and mourn bitterly for their sins. Basically, I think they realize the whole story of what happened, that they truly were Yah's people. They forgot him. They forgot his ways. They went to the nations and worshiped their gods, right? Like they're doing right now. And then when Yah calls them out of the second Exodus and the two final prophets are preaching, it really starts dawning on them what's going on. And then it says clearly he pours out his spirit on them, and then they really see. And you know how when you finally understand, like your whole life, you've been living in complete deception and worshiping Yah completely wrong. I mean, there's a pain to that, you know, and I don't know. I just think that's what he's describing right there is when Yah really opens their eyes to the whole sordid mess that this world has been for so long.
Yeah, the verse 11, I definitely made me think of Ezekiel. I think it's chapter 6.
So, sorry, can we go back to how Zechariah, Christina brought up the interesting fact of it being 12:12, and it's the land mourns separately, every family separately, the family of the house of David separately, his wives separate, the house of Nathan separate, and their wives separate. So I'm just trying to like understand like who does Nathan represent and who does David represent? And
Okay, Nathan is Solomon's brother. Nathan is actually the line that Yahusha came through because of Solomon's sin. If you look it up, the line of Yahusha comes through Nathan, which was Bathsheba and David's son. So there was the son that died, then they had Solomon, then they had Nathan. And because of the sin of Solomon, Yah said, you have lost. He rejected Solomon in the line of Yahusha, and it went to Nathan.
yeah, I guess I can see that, but I guess I'm just trying to look for like who do each of these represent when it comes to the 144,000? And maybe it's not to be like divided up like that. It's just maybe saying like you're judged alone. I don't know. That's what I don't. I'm just trying to like,
Yeah, I don't
what's happening?
understand much like
That
that.
sounds, yeah, it just in 12:12, it seems to me that this is the house of David who had eventually they were the ones that had rejected Yahusha and even some of Levi, because not all of Levi left with the rest of the nations.
I guess the one thing I am pulling out of this is that their wives are judged separately. So it's even like, how we always talk about how Noah got to bring in his sons and his wives, and the sons got to bring their wives. This is like the wives are it's every man for himself, kind of. I don't know. Every man and woman for themselves in this division.
And isn't that kind of like Ezekiel 14:14, where um they're being judged separately. And it's only by their righteousness that they've come through. And they as separate, right?
Yeah.
And the address for 12:11 is Ezekiel 6:9.
Ezekiel 6:9, you said?
Yes, for verse 11.
Did you say Ezekiel 13:13 too?
No, Ezekiel 14:14 for 12:12.
Ezekiel 14:14 for 12:12 and Ezekiel 6:9 for 11? Or
Yes.
6,
Yeah.
Yes, 6:9. Yep.
thank you.
But yeah, I don't know why he divides them out like that.
Well, and when you think about it, aren't women um influencers? So they're facing their own judgment. I don't know, just putting it out there.
Well, and they are responsible for teaching the children
Mm-hmm.
more so, right?
Yep.
And had they taught the children correctly, nobody would ever lost their identity, right?
Wait, and so who's Shimei?
Shimei is a Levite.
Okay, so the Levites and their wives apart.
Right. Because some of the Levites stayed with Judah. And I'm kind of surprised that Benjamin's not answered in here, or he's not mentioned in here.
So the Israelites are not
Right,
mentioned.
right. So I'm wondering, does he deal with the Yahudim first?
Oh, and then is 14 all the families that remain? Is that the Israelites plus maybe Benjamin?
Yep. All the rest of the clans.
Got it.
And think about it in a way, who is the last tribe that denied him and got the curses the worst?
Yeah, Judah.
And the Levites that remained,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And
So
then,
he finished with him and then he starts with them.
but
You
yeah,
know,
Benjamin not being mentioned is just interesting.
He
I
may
still
have
think they're
gone.
mixed in though.
Yeah.
Because they never really mentioned him throughout scripture either, even though he was mixed in.
Right. They're just part of the house, so it just goes
Yeah. Yeah.
and their wives are also separate from those families.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I think Christina was saying this, everybody bears their own iniquity.
Right.
Which again, Ezekiel 14:14 goes with 12:14.
Yeah.
And I would imagine too that the nations, well, if this is all connected with Yahusha, the nations who went out with Israel, they already believed in Yahusha. I mean, I can't imagine that a heathen would go out with Israel. But hey, I could
Well,
be wrong on
and
that.
then again, I think there's some confusion. So the squatters reject Messiah, but I don't think Israelites necessarily have.
Right.
Right.
Their understanding of who he is has been completely perverted, but I don't think the ones that I think most of the Israelites in this nation are, have matriculated into mainstream Christianity or something like that, not Judaism. But I think, think about it. When you say you're an Israelite and you finally realize what you had at one time or your ancestors did, and then what you lost for so long and how you were so it's yes, we were deceived, but we came from deception. None of our people ever knew him, right? It's a little more painful when you realize why how did we get here, right? I
Yeah.
don't
And,
know.
and how did another group that never knew him in the first place accept him more easily than we did?
Right. Right.
Than they did, not we.
Right. Right. It's just, to have had something and lose it is more painful to have never had it and then found it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is so sad to think about that realization, how devastating that would be.
Well, and then I think, they realize how they hurt him.
Yeah.
You know, it was them that rejected Yahusha and had him murdered, basically, right? Not, it really wasn't the Romans. It really wasn't, it was them,
They took the
right?
curses on themselves and their
That's
children.
right. That's right. And when you realize that you went through all the junk you did because of that, I mean, I'm sure it's going
Yeah.
to blow their mind.
Yeah.
It blows mine watching them. Not that any other group would have done anything different. I'm not saying that at
Right.
all.
It's like
We're
Adam
all
and
hu-
Eve.
yeah, right, exactly. We're all stupid humans. We would have done the same thing. I'm not
We
doubting that
we
at
only
all.
know better because we have their cautionary tales
Example.
written for us to read.
Right. Right. So,
Getting to verse 4, in that day declares Yahuwah, I strike every horse with bewilderment and its rider with madness. And what I see here with the word horse, I equate that with army. I strike every army with bewilderment and its rider, which I would imagine would be the leader of the army, with madness. And on the house of Yehuda I open my eyes, but every army of the peoples I strike with blindness. That's kind of
it,
how I see it. Do you guys
yeah,
see
and I
that?
think what he's saying, who obviously they're going to be blind to that they're fighting Yahusha at his return. Otherwise, nobody's dumb enough to do it, right? I think that's what he's saying. He's striking all the nations and their armies with blindness, that they have no clue what they're doing, that they're really fighting the king, the Messiah, at his return. Because if they really understood that, do you really think they would go try to fight him? I think they have to be blinded. They are blinded by the deception and lies of Satan. This is where the alien deception might come in, honestly. He's gonna try to say there's an alien coming to try to rule the world, and we've got to band together to fight against this alien invasion, which is really gonna be Yahusha and the saints.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Wow.
I know that sounds crazy, but how else are you gonna convince your average person that you have a chance to win this here? No, you don't. This is Yahusha's return.
And this
The
is
book
why,
tells you what's going to happen to the people that fight him. They have to
that's
be deceived.
and that's why there's no disclosure, right? They're not going to
Right.
disclose anything right now. This is going to be waiting until the very, very end.
That's the way I see it now. The final grand deception. Go fight the aliens coming. No, it's Yahusha returning with his bride, not a pack of aliens.
Nope. And yeah, that's why they're setting it all up.
Yep. And to me, that's the madness, right? That they can't see that that's truly what's going on here. Any other thoughts on that?
No, except that, 12:6, in that day I make the leaders of Yehuda like a fire pot among the trees, and like a torch of fire in the sheaves, and they shall consume all the peoples all around, on the right and on the left. And Jerusalem shall dwell again in her own place in Jerusalem. So this is definitely the day of Yahusha's return.
Yeah.
Can we read in the LXX again? Okay, the King James says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling." What does the LXX say?
What was the address?
12:2.
12:2. And behold, I will make Jerusalem as trembling doorposts to all the nations round about.
Doorpost.
And
Interesting.
yeah,
The slaughter's coming again
yep.
with doorposts with no
Yeah.
Yahusha's covering.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but 1260 reminds me of Revelation 12:6. Probably has nothing to do with anything, but
12:6 or 12:60? What'd you say?
12:6.
12:6
Oh,
reminds you of 1260, is I think what you were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a
oh,
place prepared by Elohim to be nourished there 1,260 days. But it was the number that was interesting to me, 1,260 days, which at that time she joins with Yahusha, and then Yom Kippur is 10 days later.
Wait, I'm sorry. I just want to confirm. Are you saying Zechariah 12:6 is reminding you of Revelation 12:6?
Yes.
Got it.
Hmm.
oh, devouring people on the right hand and the left sounds like Psalm 91 to me too. Uh, it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yah, He is my refuge and my fortress and my Elohim. In Him I will trust. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. To me, this sounds like second Exodus talk. He shall
Mm-hmm.
cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Here it is: 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right side, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked.
Okay. So 1260 or Zechariah 12:6, Christina tied that to Revelation 12:6, where that is basically the
The,
bride getting taken to a
yep.
place of safety, right?
That's up with Yahusha, right?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, is that the reference to Jerusalem that's like up in the cloud? And that's what that alien
Right.
possession will
That's
be.
right. And what Revelation 12 may actually be referencing is the very end,
Yeah.
because she's already been taken, and
Yep.
now the Hasatan is now after the rest of them who are at Jerusalem. We're talking about the nations and and the people. So Revelation 12 is about the very end. It's
Yeah.
not about the beginning.
Right.
It's
It's
the
it's
end.
Resurrection Day. That's what the countdown is too. It's when they're all collected, right? Up into the
Yeah.
cloud.
Yes. Oh, wow.
So that is representation of the New Jerusalem in a way, right? And that's what comes
The
down.
cloud, right, right, but I don't think New Jerusalem comes down.
A
It
hundred
stay,
percent,
it's
I don't either. Not
right. It
until,
stays up there. It
yep,
stays up there, but who comes down would be Yahusha and his bride to fight the enemy.
yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so when in Ezekiel, is it Ezekiel when he's like, oh no, where it's in, hold on, is it in Enoch where he's like, let me show you the bride, and it's as if it's basically showing him New Jerusalem. And we're like, no, that's not the bride, but the bride is there in this New Jerusalem in the cloud.
Between Resurrection Day and the Day of Atonement, yes, that's where she is.
Right. And isn't that in, don't, do we see that in like Revelation 9?
Uh,
Under
well,
the
actually,
altar?
I think, um, let's see, my personal belief is, and I think it's referenced in Revelation, is so the bride is resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
She's presented to the Father on the sea of glass, and that's in Revelation 14 if you read through that. Um, and then verse 15, so she's in heaven, but I think those she's getting married, she's getting crowned. Yahusha is crowned first after the resurrection. And then it says in Revelation 15:5, and after these things I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was opened. This is Yahweh's temple in heaven. And out of the temple came the seven angels having the seven plagues, or those seven last bowls of wrath that occur between trumpets and atonement, clothed in pure bright linen, having their chests girded with golden bands. Then one of the four living creatures gave to the seven angels seven golden bowls full of wrath of Elohim who lives forever and ever. And then verse 8 to me tells you the temple was filled with the smoke from the glory of Elohim. Guys, we talked about this morning, and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple till the seven plagues of the seven angels were completed. So at that time, who is Elohim? The Father, the Son, and the 144,000 of the bride, who are now inside the temple with the door shut. No one can leave, no one can come in. Why? They're being dedicated and consecrated as Melchizedek priest.
Ooh,
And that's where they are in heaven during those 10 days. And then they come out on the Day of Atonement and return with Yahusha. And the reference to that is Leviticus 8:33-35. It's the consecration of Aaron and his sons. They enter the temple and have to stay 7 days and 7 nights, being consecrated as priest. And I think that's what's pointing to here in Revelation 15:5, 6, 7, and 8. Those last 7 days, the eighth day being the Day of Atonement, when they come out, or that evening, they are being consecrated as Melchizedek order priest. But again, I think the temple in heaven is circular, just like the tabernacle was circular. And just like the New Jerusalem will be circular. Now, I do believe that the New Jerusalem is her home, but it's still in heaven during the millennial reign. And then, so any meeting with Yah's going to meet with his son and the bride during the millennium, and that's where they're going to have their meetings, and that's their home base during the millennial reign, right? The New Jerusalem, because it is completed now. But as far as where they are between the first resurrection and their return, I think they're inside the temple in heaven being consecrated.
Yeah, I think so too. Because they're resurrected first from the
Yep.
dead, and those that were still alive are taken up,
Yep. The
and they
first
go
order of
directly.
business, yeah, and during those 10 days, or actually 9 in between, the first thing they do, according to Daniel, Yahusha is crowned King of Kings. And then he hands out the crowns to his bride. And then they're married. And then the marriage supper in heaven is also their consecration as the priest. Inside, they're staying inside the temple with the Father and the Son. Sorry, didn't mean to get on this tangent, but
No, this is great, actually.
what's interesting about the New Jerusalem, if you look at the ancient Hebrew wedding things, so the son or the groom would build onto the father's house a place to bring his bride to. So I think the New Jerusalem is
The building.
attached to the temple, right? In heaven. But we know when the Father comes down after the earth is destroyed and a new heavens and new earth. There, remember, Revelation 22 specifically says there's no more temple because the restoration has already taken place. There's no need of the temple. The temple is the Father and the Son. So the temple is allowed to go away, but what's left is the house that Yahusha and the Father built for his bride. And then they come down with it. And then that's all that's left. There is no temple anymore. But I guarantee you the New Jerusalem is right beside the temple in heaven because they built on to their house to house the bride, just like the ancient Hebrews did. So again, if you want to dig into that, it's Revelation 15:5. Um 15:5, sorry. 5 through 8, and the Leviticus 8:33 through 35. You can tie it together there.
Can I was looking desperately to find there was a reference. I'm not sure if this is it or not, but second Esdras 7:26. Behold, the time shall come that these tokens which I have told thee shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear, and she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth. So all I'm saying is I think maybe some people might read that and conflate the idea that the bride is the New Jerusalem separate from the earth. But
what is it? It's her house.
that's what I'm saying.
It's her house.
That's where she is. She's in that house. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Yahusha's house too, but it's the house the father and the son built for her. So when it comes down, sure, it's going to be because it's the bride's house.
And
But
then
yeah, I
Baruch,
hear you.
Baruch 2:23, I will cause to cease out of the cities of Judah and from without Jerusalem the voice of mirth and the voice of joy, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, and the whole land shall be desolate of inhabitants.
What were those addresses, Linda?
Baruch 2:23 and 2nd Esdras 7:26.
Thank you.
Should we move on to 13?
Yeah, sure. Any more comments, or I hope we didn't thoroughly confuse everybody. But yes, I completely agree. Chapter 12 here is the just right up to Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, when Yahusha's foot hits.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, at least chapter 13 is a little shorter. Okay.
Okay. Chapter 13, verse 1. In that day, every place shall be open to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for removal and for separation. And it shall come to pass in that day, says Yahuah Zebbaoth, that I will utterly destroy the names of the idols from off the land, and there shall be no longer any remembrance of them. And I will cut off the false prophets and the evil spirit from the land. And it shall come to pass, if a man will yet prophesy, that his father and his mother, which gave birth to him, shall say to him, You shall not live, for you have spoken lies in the name of Yahuah. And his father and his mother, who gave him birth, shall bind him as he is prophesying. And it shall come to pass in that day that the prophets shall be ashamed, every one of his vision, when he prophesies. And they shall clothe themselves with a garment of hair, because they have lied. And one shall say, I am not a prophet, for I am a tiller of the ground. For a man brought me up thus from my youth. 6. And I will say to him, What are these wounds between your hands? And he shall say, Those that which I was wounded in my beloved house. Awake, O sword, against my shepherds, and against the man who is my citizen, says Yahuah Elohim. Strike the shepherds and draw out the sheep, and I will bring my hand upon the little ones. 8. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, says Yahuah, 2 parts thereof shall be cut off and perish, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and I will try them as silver is tried, and I will prove them as gold is proved. They shall call upon my name, and I will hear them, and say, This is my people, and they shall say, Yahuah is my Elohim. You know, something came to my mind in 13:8, and it reminded me of Zechariah, where he actually gave a number. I can't remember where I saw that. see. And we were just talking about it.
I know what you're talking about, Christina. Try and help you find it.
So 2/3 and 1/3, I've got marked here Revelation 16:19 that says, "Now the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon was remembered before Elohim to give her the cup of the wine at the fierceness of his wrath." But my point being in verse 19 there, the great city, of course, is Jerusalem, is divided into three parts. And that's kind of what he's saying here. 2/3 shall be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left in it. And he will bring the 1/3 through the fire and refine them. Now, is he pointing back to verse 12 when he's talking about the Israelites that are there?
I think, what came to my mind was if, if 10 of the nations came out with Israel.
10 people per one Israelite, yeah.
Right. And it would be that many that went out, but I believe a lot more are going to go out. So
Yeah.
basically multiply that by 3, and that 2/3 of the nations gets destroyed, or plus the Israelites, because I'm sure it's going to be a great big mix when they all go out. But all of the chosen of the 144,000 are going to go in, plus the 1,400,000.
The 10 per one, the 1.4
Right.
million. I hear what
Right.
you're saying. And I do agree that it would be the same slice of the pie for the Israelites that it is the Gentiles.
Yeah.
So you're saying 2/3 more than make it go out in the
Yes.
second
Yes.
Exodus, but he cuts off 2/3 of them.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think it has to be that way because, face it, there's a lot of stuff they're going to have to deal with, and the hearts of those people who just went out just because they know that Yahuah is with them, they're going to be cut off along the way. And by the time we get down to the end, um, now the rest of them are picked off, and then the
And
last
the rest
third.
will be refined by the fire, so to
Yes.
speak. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a quick question just to clarify. So are you saying that the 144,000 and the 1 million, whatever, of the nations is what's left at the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
it's a
it's
much bigger
roughly
group going, it's
Yeah, going out, it's much bigger.
okay.
We're looking at what, like 3 or 4 million?
1.5 million. Was that 2/3 more, or 4.5 million plus? So roughly 6 million. Well, let's see.
So when we talked about this before, it was 144,000 times 10, which is the 1,444,000. And then we added the 144,000 to that and got 1,584,000.
Right. And that was the total that was going uh into the millennial reign. But when
So
you
it would,
And
take, yeah.
it'd
that would
roughly
divide the
be
exact.
4.5 million that go out.
Is that considered the 1/3 then? Is that what you're talking?
Well, 4.5 million probably go out in the second Exodus, and 2/3 are destroyed, meaning they don't pass the rod of judgment. And then, so what's left after y'all sifted them all is 1.5 million. 144,000 of which are Israelites, and then the 1.44 million are the Gentiles or the nations. Does that make sense?
Maybe. I just the 144,000, which was added to the 1.44 million. I was thinking that maybe I'm reading this wrong.
So where
Because if
we
there's
got that was Zechariah 8:23. It
yeah,
says, "Thus says Yah, in those days 10 men from every language of the nation shall grasp the sleeve of a Yahudim or Israelite man, saying, Let us go with you, for we have heard that Yah is with you." So for every Israelite, there's 10 of the nations coming along. So that's
and
where we got 144,000 times 10 is
right,
1.44 million, but you
right,
still have your triple the 144,000 Israelites coming along, and they also get whittled down as well. Because Yah's judging and watching, and if you don't meet his plumb line of righteousness and repentance, you're not going to live into his millennium.
right. I was just trying to figure out the number that went in because we came up with 1,504,000, but
Yeah, that is the total going into
Yeah,
the
that's,
millennial
yeah,
reign.
okay.
yeah.
So when you say a third, is that 144,000 is included in that third, or is it 1,444,000 divided by 3?
No, 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 no. We just simply took the 1,400,000 and it could even be 1,500,000 and some, but you multiply that by 3, and that's all that goes out. By the time they get to the millennial reign, the third that's left over with the nations and Israelites combined, it'll be 1,500,000 and some odd number.
Thousand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're saying the bottom line that scriptures say enter the millennial reign are 144 Israelites. And it
Right.
doesn't give you a number, it says innumerable multitude, because we took that scripture and we said, okay, for every one Israelite, there's 10 of the nations.
Yeah, I got that. I was just trying to figure out on whether or not when you're doing the math, but that you would take that you're including the 144,000 in.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, okay.
1.4 million plus
Right.
144,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. Okay, cool. All right,
Kimberly,
that's cool.
can I try? So I think what Christina's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, you're basically multiplying the number that actually enter into the kingdom
Yeah.
in order to see what the Exodus includes.
Which
Right.
I
What
did
I
some
was
math, and to cut 2/3 to end up with 1.5 million, you start out with 4.5 million. So
So 4.5 million are the second Exodus, but
no, I
yes,
get that.
yeah, okay.
I understand where the math goes.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that. My question was, if there's 10 to every one of the 144,000, are you supposed to keep the 144,000 into the multiplication times 3?
yes,
Because
Yes.
there's okay.
yes. They get sifted too.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
thank you. That's awesome.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, they definitely get sifted too.
Lost my Bible.
That's why the crowd is so large when they go out. And they get whittled down right up to the end, and then they go through the fire.
And again, we're
Finally.
not saying all this for sure. We're just putting together the hints in scripture. You know, it's a scriptural educated guess. So don't hold us to any numbers. Verse 1 and 13, that fountain that shall be open to me, I think about the living waters that run out of the area where the Holy of Holies will be, the healing waters, right? I think that's what it's talking about there too. And then, of course, when he cuts off the idols, he means literally all these demons and fallen angels are going to be locked up. No more will that junk be allowed to be spread. And then I think it goes into verse 3. If there's anybody that won't let go of this idolatrous trash, mine said that his father and mother who begot him shall thrust him through. In other words, he will be killed. And then I've always thought verse 4 was entertaining. So all these famous preachers, if there's any left standing in that day, am I, he's gonna be saying, no, that wasn't me. I was a farmer, or I was I wasn't a preacher. I didn't preach that stuff, verses 4 and 5.
Yeah, doesn't that seem like wrong that they would be allowed to just lie about their past? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It seems weird, I don't know what's going on there. And then this is weird too, and one will say, what are these wounds between your hands?
Yeah, Christina talked about that. They're the stripes that you got, right, Christina?
Um, I don't even remember.
I remember that was your kind of understanding of this, was that there were like stripes that would be the consequence.
Well, honestly, I think the stripes come after the second resurrection, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it would.
So what day are we talking about here?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we are in the millennium. So what are these wounds?
I was struck at home by those who love me. Actually, let me look at that. And
Some of this stuff's hard to understand what it's talking about for sure.
yeah, and where the wounds between your hands.
So in verse, sorry to take away, but I don't think any of us are understanding what that means. But I don't know why verse 4 is reminding me of, is it the Amorites that come and deceive Joshua because they dress up like they're
I
poor?
think I want to say it's the Gibeonites
Gibeonites, is it? Okay.
and Joshua.
Where they pretend like they're poor and they brought stale bread to make it look like they traveled far.
Right. Yes, and they put on poor garments and old shoes to
Yeah.
make it look like they had traveled from afar.
Yeah.
And basically, yeah.
Where was that? Anyway, Tracy and Johnny brought up every prophet. Oh, they will not wear a robe of coarse hair to deceive. That points back to Jacob deceiving Esau.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because King James says rough garment, but Christina's LXX says hair, garment made of hair, right?
And
Yes.
the New King James says a robe of coarse hair to deceive. So he was trying to make himself hairy like Esau.
Yeah, mine also
Interesting.
says hairy robe.
That's crazy.
Wow. Hmm. Well, the goat, right?
Right.
And the goat represents deception because we've seen it with Tamar. We saw it with Esau and Yaakov, and we also saw it with Joseph.
Yeah, his
Wait, when did we see it with?
bloody coat,
Oh, right. It
bloody
wasn't
coat, and then
him
he
that
cut. It
presented it.
wasn't Joseph, it was his brothers trying to make his dad believe he was dead.
Right.
A garment of deception, I guess, is the,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 But what is he trying to tell us here?
Like, I think that, so I think that it's just going to be, everything's going to be clear. There's,
In the millennium,
yeah,
nobody's gonna get away with these shenanigans anymore.
yeah. I mean, at the time, like Esau, Jacob's deception was like, I don't know how, I want to say that's in righteousness. He was obeying.
Well, not really though, right? Because basically, yes, ultimately Jacob was going to be given the line and the inheritance, but instead of waiting for Yah to handle it his way, I think she, the mother, enticed Jacob to basically, instead of waiting on Yah, took things into her own hands.
Okay.
Kind of like Sarah, which made a
Right.
mess with Ishmael, right? So, yes, the ultimate goal of Yah was accomplished, but look at the hatred of that deception between him and Esau that it caused, that has been going on to this very day. Esau is trying to get back at him.
Right.
So basically, when we don't wait on Yah and we take things into our own hands, we are not going to upset the goal and plan of Yah. But what we do is make a mess and bring all kinds of ill consequences that Yah never intended. But once we get involved and start manipulating things, it turns into a mess. And isn't that exactly what Sarah, Ishmael, you know, all this stuff happens? It's a lesson. I told you, and I will bring it to pass. You just sit still and wait and have faith. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, Sarah got a little impatient.
Yeah.
Sarah did,
Rebecca.
Rebecca did, you know, you can go right down the
I
line
wonder what Yah's plan would have been had Rebecca just sat back and
and let it roll. He would have done it,
I know.
he
I wish I knew what would have happened.
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe he'll tell us, but I mean, and here again, did he not know that that would happen and he let it because this Edomite mess was part of his plan too? But still, I think it's a lesson to us. You don't start manipulating stuff ahead of him or outside of his timing and his will, because you're not gonna change anything. You're just gonna bring on yourself and others extra heartache.
Right. There's consequences, and there
Yes.
were, as we can see.
Yes.
And wasn't Jacob, didn't he pay for some of that consequence too when he went to Laban? And he was also then
Yes.
deceived.
Yes.
Exactly.
He got his own medicine, right? Y'all
Yeah.
threw it back in his face. And then his children paid for it for a long time too. Yeah, and Kimberly, yeah, that's right. Messiah's wounds. Yep. His own people had him turned over to be killed. And then I kind of thought about verse 4, when the two final prophets start prophesying, all these, and I'm not talking about your Sunday preachers or all that, but the Torah community, they'll shut their mouth, right? Because I don't think anybody with or will be going up challenging the two final prophets on their biblical knowledge.
I even kind of wonder if those channels will even be around then.
Probably not. You're right.
I mean, is there anyone that's like setting dates? I mean, do you guys know of any?
Just us.
I'm like, ugh.
So Kimberly said with Esau killing Pharaoh, you mean Nimrod?
Yeah, I met
Okay.
him.
Esau killing Pharaoh, even if he was to inherit everything, he was being hunted by Nimrod's men. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, who knows? I mean,
Oh, that's a
there's
good
no,
theory, Kimberly. I like that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it would be pretty easy for Yah to entice Esau to do something stupid to die or lose his birthright.
Do you think that was what was going on with him? Like he knew he'd be inheriting that and that he saw Nimrod as a threat or something, and he was going out to kind of take matters into his own hand or something. I don't know.
Who knows? That's an interesting thought too. Or he
Where,
thought he was gonna get the birthright,
right,
maybe.
that's what I mean. Like he would have assumed he would have gotten the birthright.
Yeah, yeah. Even to the bitter end, he thought he was. Even though this is wild, even though Abraham was clearly against him, but I guess
And
it's not up to Abraham, it's up to Yah.
And it's so crazy too about that whole scene where Jacob deceives his father with that garment of deception. He, it kind of sounds like he's on his deathbed, and that's why he needs to give Esau this blessing right now. But he lives so long. He lives until the Exodus.
Sure.
It's like 70 more years, right? Isn't it? Like, and he can't see. So is he blind all those years up until the
Yeah,
Exodus?
I think so.
I guess at
But
that
yeah, you're right.
you,
Yeah, why
you
did
know,
he do it? He
yeah,
wasn't
I mean,
about to
maybe
die.
because of his blindness and he felt like he had to pass over like the pass the reins on because he couldn't see anymore and wanted to give it to someone who had all their
Who
abilities.
could handle things in his stead? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's yeah, the garment of deception.
yeah, and Esau lusted after that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Um, but I'll tell you what, if Esau had killed Nimrod, Nimrod was pretty darn ancient, at least by our standards.
So back to Luke and the prodigal son, like Esau being the older brother who did obey his father, was expecting that full inheritance. And then the younger son basically kind of steals the inheritance from him. I'm just thinking about,
But Esau was never righteous though.
no, I know. I'm just thinking Esau, I mean, in this parable of all the characters, he's going to be the older brother that when in the end the father takes the son back who did wrong by taking his part of the inheritance and leaving and spending it and now getting brought back into the family, the older son is furious, you know? I don't know, I'm just thinking about it. That's all.
Another way I read this robe of deception, and all that stuff's right, but bringing it to our day, all these ministers, like I went to a Methodist church, they wore this black robe with these things. Your Catholic priest wears certain garbs. Your nun wears, and everybody's like, oh, look, it's the religious people or the leaders of these, false religions. And are they not robes of deception as well?
Yeah, it's like a man in uniform of any kind. You're supposed to give them respect, like
Right.
And that connects to 13 verse 2. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahuah Zeb'oth, that I cut off the names of the idols from the earth, and they shall be remembered no more. And I shall also remove the prophets and the unclean spirit from the earth. So I also see that as the those who propagate the false gods, if you will, as the ones wearing the hairy robe.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and I think verse 6 is talking about Yahusha also.
oh,
And then awake, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is my companion, says Yahuah of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. And that is, if you go to Matthew 26,
31.
yeah, it's quoted. Speaking of the shepherd being Yahusha, and when he struck, his disciples scattered.
Yeah, at his arrest.
Yep. Are
It's
you there,
also,
Christina? You want to read it?
Mark 26, or
I,
sorry,
I
Matthew.
got it.
Oh, okay, cool.
I got it. I got there. Okay. So, and when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Yahusha said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. So he's quoting that.
and
It's
where is that being quoted?
Um, Matthew 26, verse 31.
Where are you connecting that to Zechariah?
Oh,
Sorry.
7.
Thank you.
Yeah, 13:7.
Thank you.
and it's also in Mark 14:27. And Yahusha said to them, all of you shall stumble in me this night, for it has been written, I shall strike the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. And yeah, it takes it directly to Zechariah 13:7.
Yeah.
Guys, I am having an issue with my computer, and I will probably have to shut it down.
Okay.
My Zoom is not working, and I have no way of fixing this. So, yeah, I have to do a hard shutdown. Sorry, guys.
We'll still be here.
Okay.
So, then going on, and it will come to pass in all the land, verse 8 says, Yah, 2/3 in it shall be cut off and die. And this is the numbers we were talking about earlier, but 1/3 shall be left in it. And I will bring 1/3 through the fire, meaning testing, and will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. And they will call on my name, and I will answer them, and I will say, this is my people, and each one will say, the eternal is my Elohim. And that exactly matches those that go through the second Exodus and are deemed worthy to enter into the millennial reign. And then Yah says to them, these are my people. And they say and that's all over scripture.
So I like in verse 7 in the LXX, it says, Awake, O sword, against my shepherd and against the man. King James says, who is my fellow, but LXX says citizen. And that's right, citizen of the millennial kingdom.